The sound of my wife's laughter drifting through our bedroom window at 11:30 on a Tuesday night wasn't what woke me up. It was the fact that she was downstairs, supposedly asleep, and I could hear her whispering into her phone like a teenager hiding from her parents. I'm Miles Harwood, 45 years old, and I've been crunching numbers for Meridian Financial for the past 15 years. I'm the guy who spots discrepancies in spreadsheets that would make your eyes bleed, the one who catches the decimal points that don't add up. So when my wife of 20 years started acting like her own personal math didn't quite balance, I noticed. Lila used to fall asleep watching Netflix documentaries about serial killers. Now she was wide awake past midnight, giggling like she'd discovered the fountain of youth. I slipped out of bed and crept to the top of our creaky colonial stairs, the same ones that had announced every teenage transgression our daughter Danny had attempted over the years. I know, Lila was saying, her voice honey-sweet in a way I hadn't heard directed at me in months. It's crazy how 25 years can just disappear, isn't it? Like we're 18 again. 18 again. The phrase hit me like a cold slap. Lila was 43, same as me, and we'd met in college when we were 20. So whoever was making her feel 18 again wasn't me. I stood there in my boxers and faded Red Sox t-shirt, listening to my wife of 2 decades flirt with someone from her past like I didn't exist. The hardwood floor was cold under my bare feet, but not as cold as the realization creeping up my spine. I have to go, she whispered. He might wake up, but I'm so glad you found me on Facebook. This trip to Portland changed everything. Portland. She'd been there last month for a travel industry conference. At least, that's what she'd told me. Lila worked for Wanderlust Travel Consultancy, helping wealthy clients plan exotic vacations I could never afford. She'd been taking more of these trips lately, coming home with stories about boring seminars and networking events that seemed to energize her more than they should have. I heard her phone click off, then the soft pad of her feet on the kitchen tiles. I scrambled back to bed, pulling the covers up and forcing my breathing into the steady rhythm of sleep. When she slipped back under the sheets 5 minutes later, she smelled like the vanilla perfume she used to wear when we were dating. The next morning, Lila was humming while she made coffee. Actually, humming. I couldn't remember the last time I'd heard her hum anything except complaints about the neighbors or her boss. Good conference call last night? I asked, keeping my voice casual while I scrolled through emails on my phone. She paused for just a fraction of a second too long. Conference call? I heard you talking downstairs. Figured it was work stuff with the time zones and all. Oh, right. Yes. Just coordinating some client itineraries. She handed me my coffee in the mug Danny had made in high school pottery class, the one with the lopsided handle that said, "World's okayest dad." You know how it is with international travel. Except Portland wasn't international, and Lila had never taken work calls at midnight in 20 years of marriage. But I nodded and took my coffee, tasting the lie along with the French roast. Over the next few weeks, I started paying attention to details I'd been too busy or too trusting to notice before. Lila's phone, which used to sit on the kitchen counter charging overnight, now went everywhere with her. She'd even started taking it into the bathroom, claiming she was catching up on industry newsletters during her morning routine. She bought new lingerie, not the practical cotton stuff she'd worn for years, but lacy, expensive pieces that appeared in our bedroom like exotic flowers blooming in a desert. When I commented on a particularly stunning black set, she waved it off with a laugh. Victoria's Secret was having a sale. A woman my age needs to feel good about herself, you know? But I'd been handling our finances for 2 decades. I knew what Victoria's Secret charged, and it was never what Lila would consider reasonable sale or no sale. More importantly, she was wearing these beautiful things under her work clothes, not for me. By the time I got home from the office, she was already in her old pajamas, claiming exhaustion from long days and difficult clients. The business trips increased. Portland became Seattle, then San Francisco, then a last-minute opportunity in Denver. Each time, she returned with a glow that had nothing to do with mountain air or coffee culture. "You seem happy," I said one evening as she unpacked from Denver, humming that same mysterious tune. "I love my job," she replied, not meeting my eyes. "It's nice to feel appreciated for what I do." The implication hung in the air like smoke, unlike at home, where apparently I was failing to appreciate her properly. I wanted to ask what I'd done wrong, when I'd stopped being enough, but the words stuck in my throat like broken glass. It was our daughter Danny who provided the final piece of the puzzle, though she didn't know it. Home from college for a weekend visit, she was scrolling through her phone at the breakfast table when she looked up with interest. "Mom, isn't Conrad Hale that guy you went to high school with? He just sent me a friend request on Facebook." Lila's coffee mug stopped halfway to her lips. "Conrad? Yeah, he owns some gym in town now. His profile says he's from Millfield High, class of '96. Same as you, right?" Danny showed her phone screen to her mother. "He's pretty hot for an old guy. Did you know him back then?" We dated briefly, senior year." Lila's voice was carefully neutral, but I caught the flush creeping up her neck. "I haven't thought about him in years." But I was thinking about him now, Conrad Hale. The name rolled around in my mind like a marble in a jar, picking up significance with each revolution. I excused myself from breakfast and went upstairs to our home office, firing up my laptop with the efficiency of a man who'd just found the missing variable in a complex equation. Facebook made it easy. Conrad Hale, owner of Iron Will Fitness in downtown Cranebrook, about 20 minutes from our house. His profile was public, probably for business reasons, and I could see why Danny had called him attractive. He had the kind of rugged, weathered handsomeness that comes from a lifetime of physical activity, with graying temples that made him look distinguished rather than old. His recent posts were a mix of gym promotional content and personal updates. Motivational quotes about never giving up on what you want, and second chances being the best chances. Photos of him lifting weights, running local 5Ks, posing with clients who'd achieved their fitness goals. And there, 3 weeks ago, a check-in at the Portland Convention Center with the caption, "Great to reconnect with old friends at the Travel Industry Expo. Some things never change." My hands were shaking as I scrolled through his photos, looking for any sign of Lila. I didn't find one, but I found something else. In the comments section of that Portland post, someone named Lila Wanderlust had written, "So wonderful to see you again. Can't wait to continue our conversation." Lila Wanderlust. My wife's professional social media handle. I sat back in my desk chair, the pieces finally forming a complete picture. The midnight phone calls, the new lingerie, the mysterious happiness, the increased travel. Conrad Hale wasn't just some guy from high school. He was the reason my wife had started living a double life. 25 years of marriage, and I was losing her to a ghost from her past. Someone who represented the person she used to be before she became Mrs. Miles Harwood, before mortgages and parent-teacher conferences, and the slow, steady accumulation of ordinary life. I should have been angry. I should have stormed downstairs and confronted her, demanded explanations and apologies. Instead, I felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest, the same feeling I got when I found a major error in a client's books. It was time to audit my marriage, and I had a feeling the numbers weren't going to add up in Lila's favor. That night, I lay in bed listening to her breathe, wondering how long this had been going on and how far it had already gone. In the darkness, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to find out exactly what my wife was up to, and then I was going to make sure she understood the true cost of her choices. After all, I was very good with numbers, and the math on betrayal was about to become very, very expensive for Lila Harwood. The breakthrough came 2 weeks later, courtesy of technology and my wife's carelessness. Lila had always been hopeless with computers, relying on me to handle everything from software updates to cloud storage management. It was a division of labor that had worked well for 20 years, right up until the moment it gave me a front row seat to her affair. I was working late in our home office, trying to finish a quarterly report for a particularly demanding client, when my laptop chimed with a notification. Lila's tablet, which she'd left charging on the kitchen counter, had automatically synced with our shared iCloud account. Her messages were now displaying on my screen in real time. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then I saw the name, Conrad. "Can't stop thinking about yesterday," the message read. "Kissing you was like being 18 again. I know this is complicated, but I can't pretend these feelings aren't real." My coffee went cold as I stared at the screen. Yesterday had been Tuesday. Lila had supposedly been showing properties to a client who was relocating from Boston. She'd come home late, claiming the client had been indecisive and demanding. She'd kissed my cheek absently and gone straight to shower, saying she felt sticky from the humidity. Now I knew why. Another message popped up, this one from Lila. "I feel like I'm losing my mind. 25 years and you still make my heart race. I never thought I'd feel this way again." Conrad's response was immediate. "You deserve to feel alive, Lila. You deserve to be with someone who sees how amazing you are." I sat there in the glow of my laptop screen, watching my marriage dissolve in real time. Message after message revealed the depth of their emotional and physical affair. They'd been meeting regularly since Portland, using her work schedule as cover. The gym owner and the travel consultant, playing out their second-chance romance while I balanced checkbooks and paid mortgages. "Miles doesn't understand me," Lila had written. "He's a good man, but we've grown apart. Sometimes I feel invisible in my own life." Invisible. The word hit me like a physical blow. I thought about all the evenings I'd spent working late to pay for her expensive tastes, all the times I'd encouraged her to take those business trips, all the ways I'd tried to be a good provider while apparently failing to be a good husband. Conrad's reply made my jaw clench. "You're the most beautiful woman I've ever known. If he can't see that, he doesn't deserve you." I scrolled back through weeks of messages, watching their relationship develop from nostalgic reminiscences to passionate declarations. They'd moved beyond emotional affair territory into something much more serious. They were making plans, talking about the future, discussing what it would be like to start over together. "I know I need to tell him," Lila had written just 3 days ago, "but I'm scared. He's going to be devastated, and despite everything, I don't want to hurt him." How thoughtful of her to consider my feelings while she was busy destroying our marriage. I spent the next hour reading through their entire conversation history, taking screenshots, and saving everything to a secure folder on my laptop. As a financial analyst, I knew the importance of documentation. If this was heading toward divorce court, I wanted to have all the evidence I needed. But more than that, I was beginning to formulate a plan. Lila and Conrad thought they were being so clever, so careful. They had no idea that their secret romance was being broadcast directly to the person they were betraying. It gave me an advantage they couldn't possibly anticipate. The next morning, I watched Lila get ready for work with new eyes. She was meeting Conrad for lunch, according to their messages. She'd told me she had a client meeting at noon, but I knew she'd actually be at some romantic restaurant across town, holding hands with her high school sweetheart and planning their future together. "Have a good day, honey," I said as she kissed my cheek goodbye. "You too," she replied, her smile bright and false. "Don't wait up if I'm late. This client might want to see some evening properties." I nodded and smiled back, playing the role of the oblivious husband while inside, my anger crystallized into something much more dangerous: purpose. After she left, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I had research to do. Conrad Hale's gym, Iron Will Fitness, was everything I'd expected. Loud music, gleaming equipment, and the kind of aggressively motivational atmosphere that had always made me uncomfortable. I parked across the street and watched through the large front windows as Conrad worked with clients, his movements confident and powerful. He was everything I wasn't. Where I was soft from years of desk work, he was muscled and lean. Where I was cautious and analytical, he radiated the kind of easy confidence that came from never having to worry about quarterly reports or mortgage payments. I could see why Lila was attracted to him. He represented freedom, excitement, the road not taken. But I had advantages he didn't know about. I understood money, leverage, and the power of information, and I was about to get a very thorough education in the art of revenge. That afternoon, while Lila was supposedly showing houses, I used my professional resources to run a comprehensive background check on Conrad Hale. What I found was interesting. Iron Will Fitness was struggling financially. Despite his social media presence and apparent success, the gym was 3 months behind on rent and had defaulted on 2 equipment loans. Conrad was living paycheck to paycheck, propped up by a business that was slowly failing. More importantly, he was in a long-term relationship with a woman named Jessica Chen, a nurse at Cranebrook General Hospital. According to her Facebook profile, they'd been together for 6 years and shared a mortgage on a modest house in the suburbs. Jessica's posts were full of couple photos and references to their future together. Conrad wasn't just cheating on me by stealing my wife, he was cheating on Jessica too. I spent the rest of the day building a comprehensive file on both Conrad and the situation I was facing. Bank records, social media profiles, business documents, real estate information. I approached my wife's affair like the financial investigation it had become. By the time Lila came home that evening, glowing from her afternoon with Conrad, I had enough information to destroy both of their lives, but I wasn't ready to move yet. I wanted to understand the full scope of their betrayal, and I wanted them to feel secure in their deception right up until the moment I pulled the rug out from under them. "How was your day?" Lila asked as she started dinner, her movements light and happy. "Productive," I replied, and for the first time in weeks, I was telling her the complete truth. That night, as she slept beside me, I lay awake planning my next moves. Lila and Conrad thought they were writing a love story. They had no idea they were actually starring in a revenge thriller, and I was about to become the villain they never saw coming. 3 weeks into my surveillance of their affair, I decided it was time to let Lila know that I knew. But I wasn't going to confront her with tears and accusations like some wounded spouse in a daytime drama. I was going to do it with style, at the most expensive restaurant in town, on her dime. I made reservations at Chez Laurent, the kind of upscale French place where Lila loved to be seen. The kind of place where a single dinner could cost more than most people spent on groceries in a week. If this was going to be our last meal as a married couple, I was going to make sure it was memorable. "What's the occasion?" Lila asked when I told her about the reservation. She was getting ready for another client meeting that I knew was actually a workout session with Conrad. "Do I need an occasion to take my beautiful wife to dinner?" I replied, watching her face carefully. She blushed, and for a moment I saw a flash of guilt in her eyes. "Of course not. It sounds lovely." Lovely. That was Lila's favorite word for things that made her uncomfortable, but that she couldn't openly object to. Our intimate life had become lovely. My attempts at conversation were lovely. Our entire marriage had apparently been reduced to something lovely, pleasant enough on the surface, but lacking any real passion or excitement. That evening, I dressed carefully in my best suit, the charcoal gray one Lila had picked out for me 3 Christmases ago. I wanted to look good for what was coming. If I was going to destroy my marriage, I was going to do it looking like a man who had his act together. Chez Laurent was exactly as pretentious as I remembered from our anniversary dinners. Soft lighting, classical music, and waiters who spoke in hushed tones like they were conducting religious services. Lila looked stunning in a black dress I'd never seen before, another purchase from her secret shopping sprees. "You look beautiful," I said as we were seated at a corner table with a view of the restaurant's garden. "Thank you." She seemed nervous. fidgeting with her jewelry and avoiding eye contact. You look handsome too. Very distinguished. Distinguished. Another word that meant old in Lila's vocabulary. I was distinguished while Conrad was hot. I was a good provider while Conrad made her feel alive. The semantic differences were becoming clearer every day. We ordered wine, a bottle of Bordeaux that cost more than most people's car payments, and made small talk about work and Danny's college classes. But I could see Lila checking her phone every few minutes, probably waiting for messages from Conrad. It was during the main course that she finally brought up the subject I'd been waiting for. "Miles," she said, setting down her fork and looking directly at me for the first time all evening. "I need to tell you something." "Oh?" I took a sip of wine and waited. "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, about us, about our marriage, about what I want from life." Her voice was shaky, but there was an underlying excitement there, the thrill of someone about to make a dramatic announcement. "Go on." "I ran into someone on my last business trip, someone from high school." She paused, clearly expecting some kind of reaction from me. I gave her nothing. Just continued eating my overpriced salmon and waiting for her to continue. "It was Conrad Hale. Do you remember me mentioning him? We dated senior year." "Vaguely," I lied. "Well, seeing him again, it brought back a lot of memories, a lot of feelings I thought I'd forgotten." She was gaining confidence now, probably interpreting my calm demeanor as acceptance or even encouragement. "I see. Miles, I think our feelings for each other never really faded. Being with him again, it's like being 18 years old. It's like remembering who I used to be before I became so settled." There it was. Settled. The death knell of any marriage, the word that meant boring and predictable, and everything else that Conrad apparently wasn't. "And what exactly are you telling me, Lila?" She took a deep breath, clearly steeling herself for what she thought would be a difficult conversation. "I think I need to explore these feelings. I think I owe it to myself to see where this might lead." I set down my fork and looked at her directly. "You mean you want to have an affair?" "It's not that simple." "Actually, it is exactly that simple." I kept my voice calm, conversational. "You want to sleep with your high school boyfriend while staying married to me for financial security. You want to have your cake and eat it too." Her face flushed. "That's not fair. This isn't about money." "Isn't it?" I signaled the waiter for another bottle of wine. "Tell me, Lila, how exactly does Conrad plan to support you in the lifestyle you've become accustomed to? Does his gym bring in enough to cover your shopping habits, your spa treatments, your expensive dinners?" "Money isn't everything, Miles." "No, but it's something. And it's something Conrad doesn't have much of." I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. "So here's what I think is really happening. You want to feel young and desired again, which I understand, but you also want to keep the comfortable life I've provided for you. You want passion with him and security with me." "You're making this sound so calculating." "Because it is calculating. You've been planning this for weeks, maybe months. The new clothes, the mysterious phone calls, the extra business trips. You've been auditioning for a new life while keeping the old one as a safety net." Lila's composure was starting to crack. "I never meant for it to happen this way." "But it did happen this way. And now you're sitting here, in a restaurant I'm paying for, wearing a dress I bought, telling me you want to cheat on me with a man who can't even pay his own rent. How do you know about his financial situation?" I smiled at her for the first time all evening. "Because I'm very good at finding out things about people, Lila. It's what I do for a living." The color drained from her face. "What else do you know?" "Everything." I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot of one of her text conversations with Conrad. "I know about Portland. I know about your lunch dates. I know about the hotel room last Tuesday when you were supposedly showing houses." She stared at the screen in horror. "How did you—" Your tablet syncs to my laptop, remember? I've been reading your messages for weeks. Miles, I can explain. No need. You already explained everything in your texts. How I don't understand you, how you feel invisible, how Conrad makes you feel alive in ways I apparently never could. Tears were starting to form in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. She'd made her choices, and now she was going to live with the consequences. Here's the thing, Lila. You're absolutely right that you deserve to feel alive and desired, but you're wrong if you think you can do it on my dime. What do you mean? I leaned forward, my voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I mean that if you want to be with Conrad, you're free to go. But don't expect me to subsidize your midlife crisis. Hope he can fund your luxury life, because I certainly won't be doing it anymore. Her face went white. Miles, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. You want passion over security? You've got it. But you don't get both. But this house, our life. Our life ended the moment you decided to start a new one with someone else. The only question now is how messy you want the ending to be. She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. But I have you. I don't want to lose what we have. You want everything. But that's not how life works, Lila. You made your choice when you started sleeping with Conrad. Now you get to live with it. I pulled my hand away and signaled for the check. Enjoy your dinner. It's the last one I'll be buying you. As I stood to leave, Lila grabbed my arm. Miles, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. No, we can't. Because you don't want to work it out. You want to have your affair and keep your comfortable life, and I'm not interested in being anyone's safety net. I left her sitting there, tears streaming down her face, probably already texting Conrad for comfort. But I wasn't done. This was just the opening move in a much larger game, and I intended to win decisively. The war for my dignity had officially begun. The morning after our dinner at Chez Laurent, I woke up to find Lila's side of the bed empty and cold. She'd spent the night in the guest room, probably texting Conrad about what a monster her husband had turned out to be. I could hear her moving around downstairs, the familiar sounds of someone trying to be quiet in a house with creaky floors. I took my time getting ready for work, showering and dressing with the methodical precision of a man preparing for battle. Today was the day I stopped being the victim in this story and started being the author of my own ending. My first stop wasn't the office, but the bank where we'd maintained our joint accounts for 15 years. I'd done my homework over the past few weeks, consulting with a lawyer and making sure I understood exactly what I could and couldn't do legally. As the primary earner and account holder, I had more power than Lila realized. I need to restructure some accounts, I told Patricia, our longtime personal banker. Marital issues, I added quietly. Patricia's expression shifted to professional sympathy. She'd probably handled dozens of similar situations over the years. Of course, Mr. Harwood. Let's see what we can do to protect your interests. Within an hour, I had moved our joint savings, nearly $180,000 accumulated over 20 years of marriage, into a new account in my name only. I also froze Lila's access to our shared credit cards, leaving her with only the small checking account she used for daily expenses. It wasn't theft. Everything I was doing was legal, if ruthless. But Lila had made her choice, and now she was going to discover what life looked like without the financial cushion I'd spent 2 decades building. My second stop was our landlord's office. We'd been renting the same colonial house for 8 years, and the lease was in both our names. But I was the one who'd been making the payments, and Mr. Peterson was more than willing to work with me on a lease modification. Divorce is always difficult, he said, shaking his head sympathetically. But I appreciate you being upfront about the situation. We can have the paperwork ready by tomorrow to remove Mrs. Harwood from the lease. From the landlord's office, I went to see my lawyer, David Chen, no relation to Conrad's girlfriend, just one of those coincidences that make small towns feel even smaller. David was a sharp divorce attorney who'd handled several cases for colleagues at my firm. You're moving fast, he observed, as I handed him the folder of evidence I'd compiled. Most people take months to work up to this level of decisiveness. Most people don't have weeks of their spouse's affair documented in real time, I replied. I know exactly what I'm dealing with, and I want to end this quickly and cleanly. David flipped through the screenshots of Lila's text messages, his expression growing more impressed with each page. This is incredibly thorough documentation. With evidence like this, we can file for divorce on grounds of adultery, which will significantly impact the settlement in your favor. That's what I was hoping to hear. There's something else, I said, pulling out another folder. I want you to look into Conrad Hale's financial situation. I think there might be some irregularities with his business that could be relevant. David raised an eyebrow. Relevant how? Let's just say I have a feeling that Mr. Hale might not be the stable alternative my wife thinks he is. By the time I got to my office that afternoon, I'd already set several wheels in motion that would completely upend Lila's carefully constructed fantasy. But I wasn't done yet. The most satisfying part was still to come. I waited until evening, when I knew Conrad would be at the gym and Lila would be home, probably wondering why her credit cards weren't working. I'd been getting notifications all day about declined transactions, lunch at her favorite cafe, a shopping trip to the mall, even her regular manicure appointment. When I walked into our house at 6:30, I found Lila sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open and her phone pressed to her ear. She looked up when she saw me, her face a mixture of anger and panic. "I'll call you back," she said into the phone, then hung up and turned to face me. "Miles, what did you do?" "I protected my financial interests," I replied calmly, loosening my tie. "Just like you protected your emotional interests with Conrad. You can't just freeze me out of our accounts. That money belongs to both of us. Actually, it belongs to whoever earned it. And since I've been the primary breadwinner for our entire marriage while you've been playing travel agent, the law sees things differently than you might expect." She stood up, her hands shaking with rage. "This is insane. You can't punish me for being honest about my feelings." "I'm not punishing you for your feelings, Lila. I'm responding to your actions. You chose to have an affair. I'm choosing to protect myself from the consequences of your choice. But where am I supposed to go? How am I supposed to live?" I shrugged. "I assume Conrad will take care of you. Isn't that what lovers do?" The look on her face told me everything I needed to know. She hadn't thought this through. She'd been so caught up in the romance and excitement of her affair that she hadn't considered the practical implications of leaving her marriage. Conrad might make her feel 18 again, but he couldn't pay her bills or maintain her lifestyle. "Miles, please. We can work this out. I made a mistake, but we can fix this." "No, we can't, because this wasn't a mistake, Lila. This was a choice, a series of choices made over weeks and months. You chose Conrad over me, excitement over stability, passion over partnership, and now you get to live with those choices." I headed toward the stairs, then paused and turned back to her. "Oh, and you might want to call Conrad and let him know that his girlfriend Jessica might be getting some interesting information soon. Turns out she deserves to know what kind of man she's been planning a future with." Lila's face went white. "You wouldn't." "I absolutely would. And I absolutely will. You see, Lila, you're not the only one who's been keeping secrets. The difference is, my secrets are about protecting myself, not betraying the people who love me." That night, I slept better than I had in months. For the first time since discovering Lila's affair, I felt like I was back in control of my own life. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight I was content knowing that the woman who'd made me feel invisible was about to discover what true invisibility felt like. The game was far from over, but I was finally playing to win. The next morning brought the first real test of my resolve. I woke up to find Lila sitting on the edge of our bed, fully dressed, with red-rimmed eyes that suggested she'd been crying most of the night. "I need to know something," she said without looking at me. "Are you really going to contact Jessica?" I sat up, studying her face. The confident, glowing woman who'd been sneaking around with Conrad had been replaced by someone who looked genuinely frightened. Why? Having second thoughts about your great romance? It's not that simple, Miles. Jessica doesn't deserve to be hurt because of our problems. Our problems? I couldn't help but laugh. Lila, this isn't a problem we share. This is a problem you created. And Jessica absolutely deserves to know that the man she's planning a future with is cheating on her. But if you tell her, it will destroy their relationship. Good. Maybe she'll find someone who actually deserves her loyalty. Lila finally looked at me, and I saw something I hadn't expected. Genuine remorse. Not for the affair itself, but for the collateral damage it was about to cause. I never wanted anyone else to get hurt, she said quietly. Then you should have thought about that before you started sleeping with someone else's boyfriend. She flinched at my bluntness, but I wasn't interested in sparing her feelings anymore. She'd forfeited that consideration when she decided to prioritize her own desires over everyone else's well-being. What do you want from me, Miles? What would it take for you to leave Jessica out of this? It was a fair question, and one I'd been asking myself since yesterday. What did I want? Revenge, justice, or just to be left alone to rebuild my life without her? I want you to understand that actions have consequences, I said finally. You wanted to feel alive and desired, and you got that. But you also destroyed our marriage, betrayed my trust, and hurt an innocent woman who never did anything to you. Those are the real costs of your choices, and I'm not going to pretend they don't matter. So you're going to ruin Conrad's life too? I'm going to tell the truth. What happens after that is up to Conrad and Jessica. Lila stood up, smoothing down her skirt with shaking hands. I need to go to work. Will you wait before you do anything? Can you give me a chance to figure this out? Figure what out? How to fix this, how to make this right. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Lila, there is no fixing this. There is no making it right. There's only moving forward and dealing with the consequences of what you've done. After she left, I sat in our kitchen drinking coffee and thinking about Jessica Chen. I'd looked at her Facebook profile dozens of times over the past few weeks, studying the photos of her and Conrad at various events around town. She seemed nice, the kind of person who posted inspirational quotes and pictures of her garden, who volunteered at animal shelters and remembered everyone's birthdays. She didn't deserve what Conrad was doing to her. But more than that, she deserved the chance to make an informed decision about her future. If I stayed silent, she might waste years of her life on a man who was already planning to leave her for someone else. I pulled up her Facebook profile and started typing a private message. Dear Jessica, you don't know me, but I think we need to talk. My name is Miles Harwood, and my wife has been having an affair with Conrad. I think you deserve to know what's been going on. If you're willing to meet, I can show you proof. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but I thought you should know the truth about the man you're planning a future with. I read it 3 times before hitting send. There was no taking it back now. My phone rang 20 minutes later. Unknown number, but I had a feeling I knew who it was. Is this Miles Harwood? The voice was female, shaky but determined. Yes. This is Jessica Chen. I got your message. A long pause. Is it true? I'm afraid so. I have documentation if you want to see it. Another pause, longer this time. Can we meet? I need to see this for myself. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop across town, somewhere neither of us was likely to run into Conrad or Lila. Jessica was smaller than she looked in her photos, with short dark hair and the kind of tired eyes that suggested she'd already suspected something was wrong. How long? She asked after I'd shown her the screenshots of Lila and Conrad's messages. At least 6 weeks that I can document. Probably longer. She scrolled through the messages on my phone, her expression growing harder with each exchange. He told me he was working late. All those evenings he said he was training clients or doing paperwork. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Are you? She looked up at me with surprising sharpness. Or are you just trying to hurt him because he's sleeping with your wife? It was a fair question, and I respected her for asking it. Both, probably. But that doesn't make the information less true or less relevant to your life. Jessica handed my phone back and sat quietly for a long moment. We were supposed to look at engagement rings next month, she said finally. He said he wanted to propose before Christmas. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'd rather know now than find out after I married him. She stood up, shouldering her purse with the decisive movement of someone who'd made up her mind. Thank you for telling me. I know it couldn't have been easy. What are you going to do? She smiled, but there was no humor in it. I'm going to pack his things and leave them on the porch. Then I'm going to change the locks. Then I'm going to call my lawyer. I watched her walk away, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and guilt. I'd just destroyed another relationship, but I'd also freed an innocent woman from wasting more time on a man who didn't deserve her. My phone buzzed with a text from Lila. Can we talk tonight? I think I have a solution. I almost laughed. Lila still thought this was a problem that could be solved, a situation that could be managed. She had no idea that while she'd been trying to figure out how to have her cake and eat it too, I'd been systematically dismantling the infrastructure of her double life. By evening, Conrad would know that Jessica had discovered his affair. By tomorrow, he'd be homeless and single, his gym probably facing new scrutiny from creditors who'd been patient up until now. And Lila would finally understand that her choices had consequences that extended far beyond her own happiness. The game was entering its final phase, and I was the only player who knew all the rules. That evening, Lila came home early from work, which should have been my first warning that something had changed. She walked into our kitchen where I was heating up leftover Chinese food, her face pale and her hands shaking. Conrad called me, she said without preamble. Jessica kicked him out. I'm sorry to hear that, I replied, though we both knew I wasn't sorry at all. Miles, this has gone too far. You've destroyed an innocent woman's life. I turned to face her, genuinely incredulous. I've destroyed Jessica's life? Lila, she was living with a man who was cheating on her, planning to marry someone who was already planning to leave her for you. I saved her from wasting more years on a lie. But now Conrad has nowhere to go. His whole life is falling apart. And whose fault is that? She stared at me like I'd slapped her. You're enjoying this. You're actually enjoying watching everything fall apart. Maybe I was. Maybe after weeks of feeling powerless and betrayed, there was a certain satisfaction in watching the people who'd hurt me face the consequences of their actions. But that wasn't the whole truth. I'm enjoying getting my life back, I said. I'm enjoying not being lied to every day. I'm enjoying not having to pretend I don't know my wife is cheating on me. I never wanted it to happen this way. How did you want it to happen, Lila? Did you think you could just keep both of us indefinitely? Did you think Conrad would be content being your secret forever while you stayed married to me for financial security? She sank into one of our kitchen chairs, looking defeated. I thought maybe we could work something out. Some kind of arrangement. What kind of arrangement? I don't know. Something where everyone could be happy. I almost laughed at the naivety of it. You mean something where you could have passionate romance with Conrad and financial stability with me, while Conrad got to feel like a homewrecker and I got to feel like a fool? It doesn't have to be like that. Yes, it does, because that's exactly what it is. I sat down across from her, studying her face. Tell me something, Lila. In all your fantasies about running away with Conrad, did you ever think about how you were going to pay for your new life? Did you ever ask him about his financial situation? Her silence was answer enough. Because I did ask, or rather I investigated. Conrad's gym is 3 months behind on rent. He's defaulted on 2 equipment loans. His credit is shot and he's been living paycheck to paycheck for the past year. The only reason he's been able to maintain his lifestyle is because Jessica was covering half his living expenses. Lila's face went white. That's not... He never said, of course he didn't say. Just like you never told me about the affair. People in love don't always tell each other the inconvenient truths. But he owns a business. He's successful. He owns a failing business. And now that Jessica's kicked him out, he doesn't even have a place to live. So tell me, Lila, what exactly was your plan? Were you going to support both of you on your travel consultant salary? Were you going to move in with him in whatever studio apartment he can afford now? She put her head in her hands, finally beginning to understand the reality of her situation. I didn't think about the money. No, you didn't. You thought about feeling 18 again. You thought about passion and excitement and all the things you felt were missing from our marriage. But you didn't think about rent or groceries or health insurance or any of the other boring adult responsibilities that I've been handling for 20 years. So what happens now? It was a good question. I'd succeeded in destroying her affair and exposing Conrad's deception, but I hadn't really thought about what came next. Did I want her back? Could I ever trust her again? Did it even matter? Now you get to choose, I said finally. You can try to make things work with Conrad, knowing that you'll be supporting both of you on whatever income you can manage without my help. Or you can try to rebuild your life on your own, which will be expensive and difficult, but probably more honest than anything you've been doing lately. What about us? What about our marriage? I looked at her sitting there, this woman I'd loved for 20 years, and felt nothing but exhaustion. There is no us anymore, Lila. There hasn't been for months. You made sure of that when you decided Conrad was more important than our marriage. But I chose wrong. I can see that now. Conrad isn't who I thought he was. And neither am I, apparently. Because the Miles you married would have begged you to come back, would have agreed to counseling, would have tried to win you back with romantic gestures and promises to change. And this Miles won't? I shook my head. This Miles has learned that some things can't be fixed, some betrayals are too deep, some trust too broken. This Miles has decided that he deserves better than being someone's safety net. My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number, but the content made me smile. Thank you for telling me the truth. Conrad admitted everything. I'm filing for a restraining order tomorrow. Jessica. I showed the message to Lila, watching her face crumple as she realized that her great romance had officially become a legal problem for Conrad. He's going to hate me, she whispered. Probably, but that's between you and him. I'm done being part of this triangle. So that's it? 20 years of marriage and you're just walking away? I'm not walking away, Lila. I'm walking towards something better, something honest, something where I don't have to wonder if the person sleeping next to me is planning their exit strategy. She started crying then, the kind of deep, body-shaking sobs that come from finally understanding the magnitude of what you've lost. But I felt no urge to comfort her. She'd made her choices, and now she got to live with them. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the divorce proceedings, I said, standing up from the table. You can stay here until the end of the month, but after that, you'll need to find somewhere else to live. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know. Maybe Conrad has figured out his housing situation by now. Maybe you can get your own place. Maybe you can move back in with your parents. But it's not my problem anymore. I left her sitting in our kitchen, crying over the wreckage of the life she'd thrown away for a fantasy. As I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, my bedroom now, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The war was over, and I had won. Not because I'd destroyed their relationship, but because I'd finally stopped letting their choices control my life. Tomorrow, I would start building something new, something that belonged entirely to me. And for the first time in years, I was actually looking forward to the future.